All right, are you guys ready? Let's jump into it. What is executive functioning and what are the signs I should be looking at? Last month, we kind of scratched the surface and got into executive functioning skills. Now you might be wondering, how do I figure out which skills my child's lacking? Or asking yourself, does my child really struggle with executive functioning skills? Do I? Does my husband? Does my family? And more importantly, you might be asking, so what do I do next? How can I help? How can I help myself? How can I help my child? If you missed last month's training, I encourage you to go back in and watch the video. To sum it up in a nutshell, executive functioning is a name that we have given a family of brain processes that all work together to help you or your child remember, plan, and do daily activities. This includes things like simply waking up on time, eating breakfast, getting dressed, and gathering your necessary supplies for the day. You use executive functioning skills for things that seem as simple as taking medicine when your body needs it, taking care of a wound, leaving for an event on time. When you do this, you're using all 8 executive functions. This may seem easy to you, but you might be surprised, or you might not, to hear that a lot of people struggle with daily life skills. Just that basic organization of getting somewhere on time and doing all of the necessary tasks to get out the door on time. But I'm sure you agree that these tasks and these skills are absolutely imperative in our adult life to get through everyday life and be successful. Let's quickly review what those 8 executive functioning skills are. 1, impulse control. We'd much rather stay in bed and hit snooze than get up in the morning and go to work. Planning and prioritizing. What is most important? Emotional control, mental flexibility, working memory, initiating your tasks on time, being able to monitor yourself and that of your behavior, and organizing the tools that you need in life. Yes, all children are likely to struggle with some aspects of executive functioning. It's common. If it happens more often than not, you might hear it referred to as executive dysfunction at some point in your child's life. This is because children's brains develop at different rates. They mature in fits and spurts. If you don't believe me, find a child who got out of the womb and walked, or understood how to go to bed on time. These are skills in which we, as the parents and adults in their life, need to teach them to do. And that is very much accurate with executive functioning skills. Unfortunately, children who struggle with multiple functions for long periods of time likely won't just grow out of their challenges. Now, a lot of this research is new, or it's still being developed on how the child's executive functioning brain is developing and how maybe some are wired or seem to be predispositioned to executive dysfunction. Kids that fall into these categories generally need to have targeted interventions to help them improve their weak areas of executive functioning. In our next video, we're going to talk about some of the things that you can do in your home to help your child, whether your child is struggling with executive dysfunctioning or you just want to get a jump on those organizational executive functioning tasks. There are a lot of games and things that you can do in your home, in your life, that will help your child become better at their executive functioning skills and somewhat strengthen it, like going to a gym. As with any hallmark of parenting, this video is a multitask. First of all, it provides you and your child with useful information that helps you understand his or her beautiful little brain better. In addition, this will give you good data to give other professionals to use when examining your child and what kinds of interventions that might be best to help them improve their skills and thrive in life. You might notice that some of these skills will be talked about in school, show up in an IEP, or even pop up on a questionnaire in your pediatrician's office. When you have these skills already in mind and how your child is doing on them, you will have a better starting point on how to open up these discussions and have better discussions with the professionals in your life. The purpose of this video is not to diagnose executive dysfunction. It's actually to help you look at some of the different skills to come up with a target point for your child or a talking point for the professionals in their life. If you're sitting here with me today, I probably know your child, but if you're just watching this on YouTube, I have never met your child, and I can't say one way or another whether your child is struggling with executive functioning without meeting them. All right, first area, let's look at impulse control. What is that? Does your child make careless mistakes, just getting their work done or chores done? Do they give up as soon as they encounter a problem or a challenge? In class or in life, do they blurt out an answer instead of waiting to give the answer, or do they talk over others? When hitting a challenge or a task, do they do all of the fun parts first and avoid the hard parts? Do they start their work before listening to directions being given? Do they engage in risky behaviors? Do they avoid or don't do their homework? Is turn taking really challenging? Even allowing others to talk, others to have opinions, or others to make choices, is that challenging for them? Does your child interrupt when others are talking? Do they touch others' bodies or invade their personal space without permission? These are all areas that fall under the executive functioning area of impulse control. All right, some of us, all of us, at times can struggle with planning or prioritizing, but let's look at this all together. Can they chunk larger assignments into smaller pieces and see what needs to get done now and first? Or do they start with illustrations and do all of the fun stuff that maybe makes the actual work take longer? Do they know where to start on a project or assignment? Do they get stuck on something easy? Does your child turn in assignments late because they underestimated how long it would take them to do it? Or do they not complete cleaning their bedroom because maybe they thought it wouldn't take them as long as it should have? They may be struggling in that planning and prioritizing. Do they struggle with taking notes? A lot of our kids do struggle with note taking. Do they have difficulties making decisions? Do they struggle with strategizing how to solve multi-step problems? If your answer is yes to a lot of these or some of these, they may need help or intervention in planning and prioritizing. Mental flexibility. A lot of our kids get stuck on some of this mental flexibility. Think about it. Do you or your child become fixated on aspects of a routine or how something needs to be done? Do they need to sit in the same place to eat or eat the same food? Do they only wear certain kinds of food? Now think about it. If your child struggles in these areas, switch it up at home. Is it hard for you? Is it hard for you to sit somewhere else at the dinner table? I bet it is. Remember that modeling is very important for our kids, so show them mental flexibility throughout your day and throughout life. Let's talk about transitions. Does your child transition from going from one activity to the next activity, small activities to large activities, non-preferred to preferred activities, or preferred activities to non-preferred activities? Do they struggle to transition between home and school or during the week and the weekdays? If they do, this is all part of mental flexibility. Okay, we all dislike schedule changes. It is not our favorite part of life. But how does your child cope when those changes or routines that are typical in our day have an unexpected flaw? Do they become emotional? Do they have a hard time moving on or changing? Does your child become hyper-focused or stuck on one topic, one activity, or one idea? Is it hard to get them to have conversations with you about something else? Is your life Pokemon all day long? If it is, then you might want to work on having them be more flexible in their conversations or things that they're doing throughout the day. Do they struggle in switching gears? Is there one thing that they're totally willing to do and the other one is like, yeah, no, not so much today? Maybe you're going to the park and you want to transition home and that's really hard for them to switch gears. Or maybe it's just simple from being home with mom to then being home with dad, and that makes it harder for them. Go ahead and work on that and target that. Be aware and then look to intervene on how you can have them switch gears more often. Working memory is a critical skill for life. Do you or your child struggle to write and listen at the same time? Those are those note skills. Are you able to take down information if somebody calls you and gives you an address over the phone? Is your child able to take notes in class? Can they pay attention and write at the same time? That's a working memory skill. Does your child or do you feel overwhelmed when you get too much information coming at you? Think about how is your child with multi-step directions? Can you give them multi-step directions and will they follow through with each of those steps? Or can you tell them to put their toys away after dinner and then you don't have to repeat yourself? Somebody who struggles in the area of working memory may frequently forget what they were planning to say after raising their hand or starting to speak. Or maybe you walk into a room to collect something and you don't really remember what you went in for. When you struggle in the area of working memory, you might have a really hard time reading a passage and remembering it. Even if you're interested in the text, do you have to read the same text over and over again to fully comprehend what they're saying? Do you struggle with tracking the flow of conversations and participating appropriately with those conversations? That means that you're not speaking over somebody, you're not changing the subject, and you're waiting your turn and going back and forth and not leaving odd gaps or silences. All right, you guessed it. Let's do emotional control. Remember, parents, this is an area that's really important for us to model from the time they're born emotional control. Now, we talk about executive function in emotional control. We're talking about, does even the slightest little thing provoke an angry outburst? We're talking not the big problems, the little problems. Are they quick to call things unfair or unjust? That's not fair. It's my turn. Do they get angry or upset when they're doing their work and they find it a little bit challenging? Do they overreact to negative situations when they're disciplined, corrected, when it's bedtime, they get a bad grade, or even when they lose a game? Does your child sometimes unexpectedly laugh hysterically or burst into tears for no apparent reason? Do they seem to change through their moods rapidly? They're happy one moment or completely regulated and then absolutely dysregulated, but you can't really find a trigger. Finally, do they appear not to care about how others feel? Do they not take the feelings of others in account when they react with their emotional reactions? These are all areas to target and strengthen when you're trying to strengthen your child's emotional control. Let's talk about task initiation. Now, I know sometimes I struggle with task initiation when it's a non-preferred task like doing the dishes. And I'm sure there's some things that you can think about that aren't the most fun to initiate. But does your child not even know where to start on an assignment or a project, even when the directions are written on exactly how to do it? Do they have trouble focusing after taking a break? Do they procrastinate starting work until the very last minute? Do they find other things to do instead of work? Like going to the bathroom, sharpening their pencil, being on the phone, or being on YouTube? Do they frequently seem to put their head down at work time? Do they ask for help all of the time or check out because they need help but can't ask for help? Even when you know they understand the material, are they still asking for that help? Help for work they're capable of doing? If you answered yes to this, your child may be struggling with task initiation. Now, I don't know if you've heard me talk about self-monitoring before or not, but if you haven't, you will, I promise. We are going to target these skills with your child in our program. when they meet the prerequisites needed to do so. But when we talk about self-monitoring, is your child unaware about how much effort they do or don't put into their work? Do they think grades are somewhat magical? Are they confused or surprised if they don't get good grades, even though they didn't put the effort in or really do the work? Are they sad or surprised that maybe they didn't earn a prize because they didn't do their work, or they engaged in behaviors that were counterproductive in earning that prize? Does your child struggle with understanding how their behavior negatively affects other people around them? Do they talk too loud or too quickly? Do you often have to tell your child to sit down at dinner, stop touching something on the store shelves, put that down, leave your sister alone, don't touch the cat? Are these sentences that you've had to say before? If so, your child might be having a hard time managing their own behavior. Is your child completely unaware when they are exhibiting annoying behaviors? Now, I'm not talking about the behaviors that they're doing on purpose to get your reaction. I'm talking about, are they tapping a pencil, bouncing their leg, making sounds, or even complaining to others without knowing that they're exhibiting these behaviors and interfering with others' enjoyment of an activity? These are all examples of things that your child needs to do to better self-monitor themselves. If you find that your child is struggling in this area, they may need to increase their self-monitoring skills. Next, we're going to talk about organization. All right, I know we all have a junk drawer, or at least most of us have a junk drawer. That's not what I'm talking about when I talk about organization. Does your child frequently lose their video games, their toys, or things that are important to them? Do they lose their assignments, their supplies, library books, important messages, or even their electronics? Is your child unable to change organizational behaviors even when they see the consequences for their disorganization? Do you buy your child something to put their video games away in, and yet they still aren't putting that video game away in the case that you bought them to keep it organized and safe, and you're constantly tearing apart the couch cushions looking for your child's video game? Does your child struggle to use a planner, a calendar, even if you're given one and given examples on how to use it? All right, parents, what do those backpacks look like? How about the bedrooms or even the workspaces? Do they have trouble finding anything because nothing is in its place and everything's all over the place? Organization is so important because it buys us more time. When we're organized, we're able to get to something quickly. We're able to put it away where it goes quickly as well. And we aren't spending that extra time looking for something. All right, I know that some of these items are really discouraging to think about, and think about where your child's struggling in executive functioning. The good news is that we can help them every day become better at their executive functioning skills once we realize the problems and know where to target. So there is hope, and we will continue to target those with you, as well as put out more trainings on how you can help your child have better executive functioning skills. Know and be encouraged that I've said it before and I'll say it again. If your child improves in the area of executive functioning and you give them the skills in which they're missing right now, your child is going to go on to have a more successful adulthood. By graduation, if they have a lot of these skills mastered or at least on their way, they'll be more successful their freshman year when they're out of your house. Their first job, their bosses are going to thank you. There are a lot of parents I'd like to thank you for doing such a good job at teaching their child how to be organized and go through some of these executive functioning skills. And when going through this list, I hope that you found some areas that your child is really strong in, and you're able to recognize their strengths as well as their weakness. Next up, we're going to go ahead and tackle some of the executive functioning activities that you can do for your child. Thank you for hanging out, and we'll see you next time.